What's up guys, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I'll be making a full review for the Romancing Festival Muse banner. That brings 5 different styles, so no chance of off banner. If you pull, you're gonna get at least one of those. And we have Muse, that is a status buffer, ailment resistance buffer, and debuff cleanser. And also ailment cleanser. Plenty of different utilities for a character. Then Robin, that is a counter specialist, but also a fast buff breaker, a first. Then Faerie, that is more of a generic damage dealer for peers. Ward, a critical specialist that can give you many effects when fighting versus certain enemy types. And Young Feng, a farmer. Well, we're gonna start with Muse. Right here on rsrs.xyz website, we can see that she has 108% intelligence and 120% will. That's a very big value because your cleanser cannot be inflicted with ailments. It makes total sense. But for a mage, she has 86 endurance, it's also very nice. Agility could have been better, but she has fast skill as well, so it's not much of a problem. Her love is extremely high alongside her charisma as well, so her healings are going to be very strong. Moving on start of a turn, she buffs ailment resistance for all surviving allies. It's a very large effect, it's the largest effect that you can see. And she also buffs 5% will. 5% will barely makes any difference, but a very large buff to ailment is amazing because enemies cannot remove this. You can keep stacking this for 4 turns just like all status buffs. She is an upgrade to Ki, and we'll be talking more about her in a few. Then she also gives this defense boost to all surviving allies. In the case of a passive, it's 15% damage reduction. And then she decreases damage taken by 30% for everyone as long as everyone is alive if you are resisting. You can see here. So you have 2 different layers of damage reduction for the party. But you need to resist the damage. Then she also has 25% damage reduction at all times to herself. Okay. She also gets 1 BP on the start of a turn alongside another one, making for 5 BP per turn. By the end of a turn, she cures all poison, berserk, confusion, and charm applied to the team. That's nice. It doesn't cover everything like paralyze and petrify, that could also lead to problems, but covering part is already nice, especially confusion and charm, because berserk is not really, well, that game breaking, and poison is really not bad. Now, she still gives 30% increase in damage for all surviving allies as long as everyone is still alive. That's part of her damage reduction part that decreases damage taken by 30%. She has Cure Water, that's a spell that recovers HP by more than 1.5 thousand. She has very high glove. So for 1 BP, if you need to heal her, do it. The second one is Prayer of Purity, a support fast recovery skill that can be used 2 times per battle. It uses the water element and also buffs will by up to 40% on max level. You should train this and it will revive people around and recover around 2000. Besides, it also increases status ailment resistance. So she's already increasing it on the start of a turn. Now she increases it with that recovery spell as well. The third one is called Prayer of Heavenly Light. It's a support fast skill as well, and it will remove all debuffs applied to the party. It will buff all status by 25%. It will recover HP by very small, but in her case will be around 350. It will cleanse from all ailments, and it will then buff all allies' ailment resistance as well. So her most important skills can buff ailment resistance every turn. She's already increasing it passively. She can buff will via Prayer of Heavenly Light. The only problem is that this skill costs 9. In order to use this every turn, you need BP batteries. You are lacking 4. If you are just using Katarina and Katarina can give you 2, it may not be enough. She would need someone like Hardy, Candy, Asper Gal, Thomas, Sheree, and many others. But the thing here is, she debuffs cleans, and we don't have many characters that can do that. We have Razen, can do that with his relief zone via inheritance, as you can see here, and also buffs you. It's actually a very nice skill up to this day. Then we had Sirius. Sirius is a character that has it via the use of the second skill Light Wall that will trigger the debuff cleanse, and it will also buff break the enemies. It's a very good skill as well. I remember that Witch's Daughter also has it, but it's a little too old for the current meta. She can do it via use of her Sweet Smell on her Global Axis style. Now, Muse can do it with that skill, and she can keep using this every turn as long as you have enough BP. But, like I said, she is an upgrade to Ki. And Ki is a character that was used for 3 romancing fights. When she got released, she was very useful for the hard content. Magellan fight, he had a skill that would try to apply Confusion, if I remember correctly. And he also has very high speed. It was hard to protect your party. It's like you needed 2 wheel buffers at least, and it was too hard. And Ki could do that by herself, opening a slot in your party. Well, Ki can do the same. She buffs 5% wheel. She buffs ailment resistance by very large. But on start of a round, she has this extreme wheel buff that, well, Muse doesn't have. And then Muse can also buff very large again. In this case, she can't. She only buffs large via Pure Veil, as you can see here, or very large via Prayer of Purity. But the third skill, Glacial Sphere, that will buff will, only recovers HP, does not buff ailment resistance. So Muse, as a whole, if she can keep skill number 3, is a full upgrade over Ki, as you can see. But you still require a BP battery in your party, but you may already have because you need for other characters as well. If you already have Ki, you can still use her on challenges that require you to have an ailment resistance buffer. It's just that if you skip it, Ki, you can get Muse. Muse is not better than Matriarch as a buffer. Of course, Matriarch has a better setup because she buffs 30%. She has a fast buff as well. She can do it always because of the cost being low. Matriarch will heal more because of Heaven's Heal that can also recharge every 5 turns. And she allows everyone to self-buff when they are attacking, as you can see via Tone of Hope. So eventually you have much higher status by using Matriarch when compared to Muse. But Muse will replace Matriarch in challenges where you need extra ailment resistance. And as you can see, she does not buff ailment resistance. She does not have debuff break. Are things that can be used in some fights, and not in all. I would say that if you consider 10 hard challenges, you'll probably be using Matriarch in 8 of them, and Muse in 2 of them. You can still use Muse if you don't have Matriarch as well, because she covers at least buffing and many other effects, and her heal is pretty powerful. But it will be even better if you have her inheritance called Fright Fleuret from her past style, the one that has Noble Prayer skill, because this recovers HP by small effect while doing damage. Damage is really non-important, but her heal is around 1,800 at base level. It's a lot of healing if you want to use Fright Fleuret, probably in situations where you need extra help. And in some fights, you may sometimes also have 2 buffers anyway. One can drop and Muse can heal, for example, since she's already casting ailment resistance every turn passively. And Noble Prayer is a skill that you could theoretically use if you don't have enough BP batteries, and she at least buffs will, and you have the ailment resistance alongside will buff. But overall, I'm not so sure if this is as good, since you will probably bring Muse for cleanses of ailments, debuffs, and also ailment resistance. Now, is she really worth to pull for? It depends if you want to clear some hard challenges without having to create alternatives. But I believe she deserves a 4.5 out of 5 by being still pretty unique and useful. But she does not beat Matriarch and can still be skipped if you don't mind about having this best in slot character for ailment resistance. Moving on, the next character we'll be talking about will be Robin. And this guy here is actually pretty interesting because he has 126% dexterity, 99% will and endurance. Could have been higher for a tank, but they are nice enough. 95% agility, but that doesn't really matter, and the other status are not that high anyway. On the start of a battle, he will reduce cost for his skills by 2, permanent in battle. And he will also grant himself formal stance. That's the same passive as the good version of Julian for physical attacks. So he taunts, and then he applies stealth to everyone else. So in turn 2 onwards, he already has a very high chance of being attacked, especially if used on the Rising King or Rising Phoenix EX formation. And also when landing an attack, always chases with Pierce Lightning. Pierce Lightning is an 8 power attack that's not very strong, just 8 power, but it gives an attack boost that increases damage potential 15%, and it lasts for 2 turns, so you can actually stack this attack boost. Now, when being attacked, he will always reduce damage taken by 25%, and has a 25% chance to evade. Now, when he is directly attacked, he will always counterattack with Robbing the Justice. This is his main skill. It's a single target attack, fast, that costs 10 when used as a command, but actually 8 because of the discount, and it will buff break the enemy. So a fast buff breaker is actually pretty interesting because although Sirius is such a good character, he had a very big problem of having low agility for some bosses, and his buff break, although being AOE and very good on that, it was not fast enough to stop enemies from attacking before. So in the Firebringer boss fight, Robin can attack before Firebringer and buff break before you have problems like ailments, extra damage, so that's actually pretty interesting to have a fast buff break. And he will counter with that skill, and if used versus enemies that self-buff, it's amazing, especially the Megalith Dragon that will come soon. So, Megalith Dragon self-buff when attacking, and then Robin will counter and removing all buffs. Now, when all allies are still surviving, his attack increases by 30%, and he will also reduce damage taken by resist by 40%. So, if you equip him well, he's gonna reduce damage taken by quite a lot. He also has this heat up that increases damage by 30%, up to 5 times, for a total of 150%. He has just 4 BP per turn, that is not that high, but he only uses 8 for Robbing the Justice as command. If you have some BP batteries, you can use it every turn. The first skill, Thunder Sting, uses 2 BP, and it's a dexterity and agility buff by 30% for 2 BP. It's amazing, actually, but since this one is free, since you have the BP decrease, it's even better. The second skill, Right Tails Robin, arrives. It's support that will give a defense up, decreasing damage taken for the whole party by 15%. And then he will grant this guard up very large for 2 turns, decreasing damage taken by 50%. That's nice because it's kind of like a similar way to Alkaiser that uses Glory Force on start, giving you extra support, since many times the enemy has way too much damage on turn 1 where you still have not casted all of your defensive supports. He also increases damage potential for everyone by 20% via heat up. His own damage is not that high, but it can reach high potential if he keeps countering, because he gets attack boost, but even then, he's not meant to be a finisher for counter strategies. It's more of a support than anything. As for inheritance, there's nothing that really matters here, because he's already good enough, but you could theoretically inherit Matador, so that he enters an evasive counter stance, and then he will counter 2 times, once with B power, the other one with his double S attack, Robbing the Justice. But it doesn't change much, it's just extra damage. Robbing is an interesting style because of his counter mechanic and fast debuff that will be very useful versus the Megalith Dragon, if you care about that challenge, because it will allow you to upgrade Triple S Remembrance weapons. It is still not as important as some other characters that will come, but good to have. I believe that he deserves 4 out of 5 in my new grading system. If you don't mind about Remembrance, his utility is much lower, and there is still another counter unit that can work there if you have the newest Monica, and you can just get an inheritance from her Global X style, Dazzling Ballet, that can also counter, but it is not as good, or you can also use Mikhail with Matador, but Mikhail latest style is not that good for future as well. or even his kit version, but can use somewhat. Now the next character we'll be talking about will be Ward, and this is a very odd character. Ward has 101% endurance and 101% will, but 130% STR. That's a pretty big volley alongside 114 agility. A great sword user with such a speed is amazing. Well, he makes that all your attacks, or yourself and surviving allies, become critical versus insect, aquatic, and fish enemies. This is very, very specific, and we work like once every 10 challenges or so? I don't know. And all surviving allies critical attacks damage will increase by 30%. So, if you are fighting versus aquatic, insect, or fish, you're going to get 50% damage increase just because of this, because a critical attack increases damage by 20% only. So, when attack damage will also be reduced by 30%. He's a critical specialist that is very gimmick. When he lands a critical attack, and he has many types of critical attacks, he has many effects, but more into that later. He also has 40% damage increase at all times, and then another 50% if the attack is critical. This passive is important because he can apply to the party. And he does that via Hunter's Roar. It's a support fast skill that will grant this passive permanent in battle, so it will double the effects for himself. He will get up to 180 from double hyper lethal tension if landing critical attacks. Then he grants all surviving allies this passive, but this one lasts for 5 turns. When everyone lands a critical attack, they recover 5 VP, including himself. But he will have lots and lots of VP on the start of a fight, but after 5 turns, the effect is over. He also grants himself a guard up large that decreases damage taken by 35% just to himself, unlike robbing a cast for the party. The skill costs just 4, so it's easy to cast, and you should be using this on turn 1. Usually because you already get the extra effects, unless you want to save for a moment where you need extra VP. Then, he has Yaksha Flash Plus, that is a single target attack slash damage that attacks between 3 to 5 times, and it's critical versus human, beastmen, and flying enemies. This gives him more critical types, and between 3 to 5 times, it's nice because 3 hits is already triple S power. If you get more than that, it's just extra. The attack is good. Then we have Continuous Gravedigger. It's a single target attack with slash damage as well. Instead of betting on RNG, we have 4 hits with E power. Critical versus demon and undead. And because it's 4 hits guarantee, it's like 4S power attack. But now, we have 2 attacks that have critical effects, alongside all of his attacks already being critical to insect, aquatic, and fish. The good thing, these types will cover most remembrance fights. Like, for example, Real Queen is an insect. Wuhan is a human. Princess Lion, I believe, is considered a human. Then there is Carmine, that is a human. Wyvern is a flying enemy. The Megalith Dragon is probably a flying enemy too. Big Frey is a human as well. So he will work super well there. And even if your characters are not taking benefit from the critical damage, they are still getting the effect from his second passive. That is finally time to talk about. When you are landing on critical attack, that is, you will cover all of these types I mentioned it. You grant all surviving allies this attack boost that increases damage potential by 20%, lasts for 2 turns. Also a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 25% and can stack, will then buff all status for all surviving allies, including yourself, by 15%, and also recovering all surviving allies BP by 2, and his own BP by 5. That's a lot of BP generated, and it doesn't even care about the critical assault. You can generate 10 BP to yourself just to keep using whatever skill you want. So it's very good, but also very bad. Very good because you have a lot of effects versus certain types. But there are bosses that don't have a single type. Yeah, it appears like none. Who knows why? There are god types, there are dragon types, but they are not considered flying. There are female types that are not exactly considered human types. So plenty of other types that will not be covered by him. And, well, all of the effects will only work if your characters are also attacking insect, aquatic fish, or they themselves have attacks that are critical. Like, for example, Matriarch has an attack that is critical versus undeads and demons as well. But not many characters will have critical attacks anyway. It is a very interesting setup, and inheritances don't help him. But in the end, he'll be used more on Remembrance, and versus some challenges where the enemies are these types, especially the ones on the top, not the ones on the bottom. And we will have the Spiral Floor 260 where we fight insects, and Ward will be there to help us kill. But it's not the only way to beat the challenge, it just makes it much easier because he is a good damage dealer alongside giving many different effects, increasing the damage potential of your squad by quite a lot when they are landing critical, but they need to cover insect, aquatic, and fish. It's also worth to say that you can craft a critical weapon for Ward so that he has access to more enemy types. You have to craft many, it's a very tedious process, but if he is landing critical attacks versus other enemy types, you are guaranteeing all effects like attack boost, defense boost, status buff, 2BP, but in the end, Katarina kinda already covers this all. Now maybe if you want to double down, it can work sometimes. Ward is a nice character for specific situations, but ultimately super skippable and will receive a 3 out of 5. After Ward, we have Young Fen. This is a generic farmer. He has 125% agility and 125% intelligence. Nothing else matters, believe me. He starts the fight with 20 VP and has a 20% damage increase alongside another 40% and a 30% when on full HP. So you have 90% total. By the end of a turn, he gets 2 BP, but if no damage was taken, you get another 5. Alongside the normal tree, you actually get 10 BP since you are farming. Skill number 1 and 2 are not that great, because they are not strong enough. Power Grab can recover HP, but why would you use it? It's all about skill 3 Shadow Blast. It's a full AOE attack with Blunt and Shadow that hits 3 times with deep power. Because of the high damage potential, you are going to do a lot of damage anyway. You can also cast a stun, but stun is not important when you are grinding. It will solo stages where the enemies are weak to Blunt and Shadow, and you have more than one enemy. And will be safe as a solo farmer for the time being, but recent farmers actually have 2 different skills that can be used for farming. He only has one, Shadow Blasts, and it's for Blunt and Shadow. He needed to have a single target version to cover different stages as well. And the only thing he has is a Spectral Persona double S power attack that is not strong enough. So even when compared to the recent farmers, Young Fen disappoints. I believe he only deserves a 4 out of 5. I think he only deserves a 4 out of 5 as a grinder, and that doesn't mean anything, since it's super easy to skip, and if you already have Xiao, she already covers those 2 elements while being a much better character. Without considering a grind, I believe this guy deserves only a 1 out of 5. The last character will be Faerie, and she's a damage dealer, so 128 STR is nice, 96% agility, and finally she has a style with high endurance, 93%, and 99 will are actually pretty nice. When attack damage will be reduced by 30% at all times, she starts the fight with 12 BP, and by the end of a turn she has a 37% chance to recover the usage of one skill that we'll be talking in a few. When activating Overdrive attack with a single target attack, she will chase with Round Slicer. That is a 4S power attack. That's actually pretty strong. And if it's using an AOE attack, she would then chase with Big Wheels Plus. That is an S power AOE Pierce attack. She starts the turn with Heat Up, getting 20% damage increase. That can trigger 5 times per battle. And a weak Heat Up, that is just like Heat Up, but only versus weak damage. And this one actually increases damage potential by 50%, and it triggers 4 times per battle, meaning that she can get 200 from this and 100 from the other to reach 300% damage potential by turn 5. Well, that's quite a lot, right? And she wants to use that skill Fairy Circle on the start of a fight, because this one can only be used 2 times to start recharging. You will never have more than 2 stacks, but use it and then 37% chance to recover every turn. Usually mean that you get one usage again before you need to use it. What are the effects that she gets when using Faerie Circle? By the end of a turn, she will get the OG Gouge Fillet. She will recover her HP by around 1.5 thousand and also get 5 BP, so that she will always be able to use her best skill wherever she wants. Then, on the next turn, on the start, she will grant herself an attack boost that increases damage potential by 30% only that turn, and also a Pierce attack boost. This one increases Pierce damage by actually 45%. Then, you will want to use something for damage, right? Flurry Dive is what you're going to use for single target. It's a single target attack that casts morale up, very large, and very large is 50%, launches an attack with 4S power, and then you're going to chase since you are on overdrive with Round Slicer. So you're going to have two 4S power attacks powered up by the morale up and already powered up by all of her passives and also Faerie Circle effects. It is a lot of damage, for sure, and she can keep using this and will never run out of her cycles. If you want AoE, you have Wild Snake Blaster that has poison that will help versus Carmine if you didn't clear that yet. But for AoE, the cycle is much weaker. Opens with P and then has an S power follow-up and without the morale up power to increase damage potential. So if you're going to use her for clearing challenges, she works in all of the Remembrance fights and also some hard challenges. It's not future proof. She doesn't have anything for the party, but the damage is quite strong if you think about it. You can still inherit that Big Wheels plus if you want. That is an S power attack, and then she can chase again with Big Wheels for AoE, but you need the first premium style of Faerie. And besides, you could use Divine Lancer Plus if you wanted to debuff Dexterity, but her intelligence is just 71%. Will only work if you had other people in the party buffing her. And nothing else really matters with this Faerie. She's very similar in design to Erpina. Well, remember Erpina? She has a very good design where she uses the same thing. She uses Lade's Worth Stress Composure and she gets attack boost, morale up, OD, HP, and DP. But she has a stronger attack, Dual Tempest, that hits 4 times with C power. It does much more damage. And she also has a chase attack. But she has lower passives. And she will just run for 10 turns and stop. Other designs are pretty similar. Arpina works well as well with Ihachi when you are using them together for overdrive. And I believe that Faerie will work with some other characters that are also overdrive specialists, but if you don't get her, it's, well, simple. Don't worry, you will get other strong pierce damage dealers and even some that can help the party with something else. Besides, Faerie is a steady damage dealer that has just full damage potential, and I'll give her a 3.5 out of 5 in my new grading system. Now back to the banner image. Is this banner worth summoning for? Well, yes and no. First, yes, because of Muse and Robin. They are good enough. Muse is not mandatory, just like Robin's not. But if you are a meta chaser and want characters that can fit some roles, and if you care about future challenges, getting them will be nice. But the other characters are not that good. So even though this banner has 5 styles and you don't have off banners, I believe it only deserves a silver award, and it's not as good as a Katarina banner. If you still didn't get Katarina, go after her. She is a meta must-have, while all of these other ones will find replacements, and the only 2 really stellar units are Muse and Robin, because the other ones are not that great. But that's just my opinion. What is yours? Please say here on the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and if you want to support the channel, we have links on the description. Hope to see you soon on the next one. Goodbye.